Greetings. Welcome to the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track Buffy Watch for Season 5. We are going to talk about this very, should we say, dramatic and impactful season. I know that it's going to be a great discussion. It's always a great discussion with my wonderful panelists anyway, all of whom are veterans and longtime Buffy lovers. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will have them introduce themselves to you first, and we will begin with Marks.
Hey, I'm Marks Pyle. I'm a filmmaker, author, and podcaster. So, been a fan of Buffy since it first aired, actually, and I'm excited to talk about season 5.
Yeah, good. Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Dolbner. I write paranormal cozy mysteries and romantic urban fantasy, and I was a latecomer to the Buffyverse. I did not binge watch the series until probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Well, yeah, you said that you first were aware of it when you were in college or something, and there were people in the dorms who watched it.
I remember because it started when I was in college. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Anna.
I'm Anna Puerta. I'm a volunteer on the Urban Fantasy Track, and I have an MFA in film and television. And I started watching Buffy when I was 9.
Oh, there's something so sweet about that.
Probably shouldn't have.
Jean.
My name is Jean Stein, and I write urban fantasy as well. And I was rather a latecomer to Buffy too. I never saw the series when it was on. It was a long time after when someone said to me, "You just have to watch Buffy." Maybe it was you, Carol. I'm not sure who.
No, you were already. We bonded over a mutual love of Buffy when we met. Yeah,
that's true.
But yeah, well, you'll have to try to remember who that is so you can thank them. Although I bet you already have. And Davior.
Hey, folks, I'm Daviar Snipes, Georgia born, but now living in Ontario, Canada. I'm a theater voice and film actor, and been watching Buffy's live since season 2, and happy to talk about this season, most definitely.
Yes, anybody who was there for our very first Supernatural Showdown competition at DragonCon, which was in 2021, or not? Yeah, we did the Supernatural Showdown, but we also did the Buffy. I can't remember what it was. My season is better than yours. That's what I called the competition panel for Buffy. That was tricky because we tried to cover all 7 seasons in an hour, and it was tough. But in any case, so I know that Daviar has a lot of great things to say about this season, and I'm going to start with the very first. Everybody knows what questions this is going to be, and I will tell you that you're able to say whatever episodes you want and whatever, but we will have a separate question about the body episode because, well, personally, that's just for me from a selfish standpoint because I want to, and that's I think the episode that I've seen more than any other than the musical maybe, and for whatever reason I'm not sure, but go ahead and tell us what was your, did you have a couple of favorite episodes this season, and was there one that you could have just done without, that it just didn't ring true for you, or you just didn't feel as though it, kind of fit what was going on in the season? And Marks, we'll begin with you. You're up first this time.
I think my favorite was Fool for Love. I'm just a big Spike fan, and I really enjoyed seeing his origin story. And yep.
No Funko, but I have this stand-up.
And we never get to see like the past Slayers, so it was nice to see glimpses of some past Slayers. And you see how he got his scar, you see how he got his coat. His his identity's been very defined by Slayers apparently, and it was just great seeing his origin, seeing how he interacted with Angelus, and you can see that Angelus was a little bit intimidated, didn't want to show it, but was a little bit worried about whether or not he needs to worry about him or not. And I do like as Angel does quite a bit, the flashbacks with the vampires. I forgot what the nickname is for that group, but I always dig those flashbacks with that dynamic too. So, but yeah, that's probably my favorite of them all. My next, and I'll mention one more, was just Buffy vs. Dracula, because that's great to see Dracula.
Yeah.
and Xander, our last, not last, but one of our last Xander being silly things, where at least Xander kind of semi grows up after that a little bit, sort of.
He's tired of being everybody's butt monkey, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, maybe he made a conscious decision, right?
So it was cool that they had Dracula in there and had a lot of fun with it and stuff too. So that's a couple of my favorites. So
okay. Anything you didn't particularly like this season? Was there one that
I can't think off the top of my head in general? The story arc of Glory, there's a lot of episodes focused on that storyline, and so sometimes it was like, maybe because I watched so much of it, in a binge, I was like, do we have to have another Glory episode?
okay.
So maybe a little bit less Glory would have been nice, but otherwise I can't think of off the top of my head of any particular episode.
Well, if anything occurs to you after we go through,
I'm sure
somebody
Beth
else
or somebody else going to say it, and I'll be like, yeah.
Oh, that's it. That's the one. So, Beth, that was a good segue. You're up next.
I also love Fool for Love. I'm a Spike girl, so I love getting to see that backstory of his. Another episode I really like this season is Family. I really love found family themes and stories, and it's an uncomfortable episode, I think, to watch because of the way Tara's family behaves. And that's a very real theme that happens in our world, where people's families don't accept them for who they are. They want, their children to conform and fit some kind of a mold. And so it is uncomfortable, but it also is so heartwarming to see the way the Scooby Gang is like, no, Tara's our family. She belongs with us. And so I really like seeing that. Another episode I really enjoy in this one is The Replacement. I complained back in, what was it, season 3, I think, with the episode The Zeppo, because I said it had so much potential to be a really fun, wacky Xander adventure. And then it just kind of fell flat for me. Whereas The Replacement was a really good, wacky Xander adventure. Like, it was everything I felt like the Zeppo wanted to be. So it was kind of neat to see him get that sort of episode where we got to see him really having fun with his character. As far as dislikes, probably my least favorite of the season would be Checkpoint, when the Watcher Council comes over and is trying to be like, oh, you have to do these tests for us, Buffy, before we'll give you information about Glory. Because I feel like the council is evil and makes terrible decisions theme has been done to death, and we just didn't need another episode to remind us of that. So it felt like a bit of a throwaway episode to me.
Okay. I would disagree, but this is your. Well, we'll go on, Anna.
Yeah, I feel like, the obvious ones have already been said. But I do want to throw out the episode with the giant troll in the magic shop, Olaf.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just fun. And I also, I think one of the episodes I'm like iffy about, but I also like, is the demon from outer space that comes. Like, it's, I like that episode. But I'm also like shaky on like bringing in something from space into the show, because it just felt so different from everything else the show has done. And sort of like, is this part of this universe now? Like, are there aliens? What are we doing? But I did like the way that the demon worked and how he was sort of like hunting down the key and what that meant. I thought that reveal was good, but the alien part kind of held me up.
Well, I thought he was coming from a different dimension, though. I mean, I thought that, didn't they think it was an alien at first, but then he was summoned, because we find out it was Ben who summoned him.
Yeah, but he came in on a meteor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it said something about moon goddess. Maybe he's a moon demon. That's not.
It's a moon demon.
Yeah.
We're kind of hazy on that one then. Okay, well but yeah, that does make sense that it would be. It is completely different than the kind of thing we've dealt with before.
Yeah. But okay.
Okay, so that's your one. That's the one that you would say as your.
Yeah, that I'm sort of shaky on, but the other ones, everybody already said. Family, sort of Tara really finding her place, and Buffy versus Dracula is, fun, and Fool for Love, because I also love Spike, and so those are, and obviously like The Body, I'm sure we'll get to that, and The Gift are both also pretty special episodes.
So. Oh yeah, for sure. Jane.
I think my least favorite of the episodes, besides the meteor and that monster that came out of it, I didn't like that one either. But I didn't like the Dracula. I didn't like episode 1 because, to me, I mean, they just made him a comic character, and I guess I just felt like Dracula should have been a little more forceful. And I mean, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way they portrayed Dracula. They made too much of a comic book character, and I like Dracula, so I wasn't crazy about this one. It was funny though at the end when she stakes him and he keeps coming back. She stakes him, you always come back. I really like that, and of course at the end of that.
Yeah, that was the comment.
Yes. Yeah.
Stays down.
But at the end, when dawn happens, and I remember my reaction seeing that, because I saw that before I saw anything, after that, and it was just like what Xander said once. It was like, what? Huh? What? All of a sudden there was a sister. It was like, where the hell did she come from? And then I thought, where is Joss going with this? And of course, Joss is a master, and I thought that looking at the season as a whole and looking at Dawn as a whole, I think that just shows what a creative genius Joss was, to take the catalyst for an apocalypse and put that into an innocent's body. I mean, he's amazing. I think my 2 episodes that I liked, and I know we're going to talk about the really somber ones later, right? I mean, we're just talking about other episodes.
You can mention if The Body was one of your favorites, but we're going to talk about it.
And the episode after that. I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Forever.
Yeah, those 2 are really hard to watch. I liked the replacement because I like Xander, and I thought that was such a cool idea. And I really liked the way that it ended, because they were 2 parts of a whole, and it wasn't one was better than the other. But they had to be together, or there was no Xander, and it did help him grow up. I think it kind of made him more mature after that. And the other one was Out of My Mind. I like that because there's such a funny, to me, there's such one of the funniest moments in the whole season is when Harmony runs to Spike saying that she is Buffy's arch nemesis. Yeah. I just love that. And Buffy is after, like, she's not even on Buffy's radar. Well, I like that too. So I guess that answers that question.
Okay.
Do we get into other things? Okay.
Yep, you're good. Davior.
Yeah, this is really special for me because I think this is apex Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was in that debate, Carol, that you brilliantly ran, that I argue that this is the greatest season of Buffy. Now, I don't think it's the most fun season or something like that. I mean, for me, that's still season 3. But when I think about the drama and the way the characters are presented, and when I think of the arc of the overall season, and particularly Buffy's arc, this is like apex Buffy the Vampire Slayer in all of its best forms. I think it is the most consistently great from beginning to end. I think it's got the best finale, yes, even topping the series finale. I think it's the best. It's the best struggle and growth of the Buffy character, I think, too. I think The Body is the greatest episode of Buffy, bar none. So yeah, there's a lot in this season, I think, for me to, for us to kind of talk about. Like, even like for me, some of the lesser episodes, like I think The Replacement is a great episode for Xander. And I think it's a great character episode for Xander, much like, the Zeppo that we talked about in season 3. But I think every episode is pushing the characters forward. There's not a single episode that is a waste or is not revealing something very important that either doesn't come to fruition this season, comes into fruition in a later season, such as Willow and the darkness of her magic, all of that. There's so many things that truly come to foundation in this season. So yeah, there's a lot for us to talk about, but I think this is apex writing and acting and character arcs for all of the characters in this show.
Well, I think you make a really good point about that, about, there not being any like chaff, I guess, that everything forwards the story or the characters. And I remember there was, this was a couple of months ago, a Facebook friend of mine said something, or was wondering, so what do you think was the best episode of Buffy, or the best season? And I said, well, if you're talking about a season as a whole, I said I would have to say 5. But even though a lot of my favorite episodes from the series are not in this season, but I think it's what you're talking about, that there's this cohesiveness to it that we don't always get in some of the other seasons. Not to say that the others, I'm not saying they pale in comparison. I just think that you hit the nail on the head with that, in terms of, the fact that it doesn't seem as though there's anything that is unnecessary, that everything works toward, now Jean didn't like Buffy versus Dracula, but maybe the whole point of that one was just to be silly in the beginning and then shock the hell out of us with,
Mom.
Damn, why did you take my point? That was my, you got it, Carol. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay.
That's it.
Now, our next question is going to be about Dawn. And I want to preface this by saying that I know that I've heard this for years, all this, dislike of the character, and, people just, don't see that she seems to be a very divisive character. And, I never really got it. I've always wondered, well, what's all the hate for Dawn from? I just didn't understand it. But then when I was rewatching it, because my thought was, well, she's just a teenager, which none of the rest of them really are anymore. So that's one of the reasons probably that it's juxtaposed that way. But in any case, it's, I still kind of wonder about that, why there's all the vitriol. But what I'm curious about is, in terms of this season, only within the context of this season, what were your impressions of the character, your feelings about and reactions to her, and did those change over the course of the whole season? Because she's in all the episodes, even though the first one is just very little, but when we're shocked, but did it change over the course of the season? And again, we're going to talk, I want to do it just in context of this season. And Beth, you're up first.
Well, I would say, first of all, yes, my opinion of Dawn changes as the season goes on. But I would also say that my opinion of Dawn changed greatly with this rewatch. I have always been one of those people who considers Dawn like the Scrappy Doo of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that she was just annoying and I didn't like her, and I didn't like the way the character was written. So going back on this rewatch, I tried to pay a lot more attention. Well, why is she written this way? And to be fair, she's pretty annoying in real me, but I realized that that's kind of the point. And
Right.
I'm an only child, so I can't relate to that sibling rivalry stuff and those kind of petty little arguments about who stole somebody's scarf or whatever. But moving past that episode, I found that it's a lot easier for me now to empathize with Dawn, because imagine being the Slayer's little sister. What a horrible, I mean, she must have felt like the forgotten child so many times. So of course she's acting out. Of course she's a little bit of a troublemaker. I mean, not just because she's that age, but also because of where she stands in the pecking order with her big sister. And another thing too, when Dawn finds out that she is the key, I mean, talk about a teenage identity crisis, you know. And I think that scene where she walks into the room and she's cut herself with a knife, and she was like, do I not bleed? Is watching it again, it's such a poignant moment, because I can't blame her for feeling that way. And it's a lot easier. Maybe it's because I'm older, or maybe it's just because I've, seen the series enough now that I've kind of settled into having Dawn as part of the series. I have a lot more sympathy for her character now. And I think that if any of us were in that kind of a situation where you weren't sure who you were or where you kind of belonged in the world, would any of us have acted any differently than she did?
Okay, good point. Anna?
Okay, so yes. Well, when I first saw the episode, I was like, did I miss something? Like did I
like a whole season?
Did the season start before? And I remember I turned to my dad and I was like, she doesn't have a sister, right? Like, because and there was no internet back then, and everybody was just, I mean, there was internet, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
So it was but yeah, I think, and this is after many years of reflection, I think that a lot of us were teenagers or around that age when we were watching it, and I think that we all wanted to be like Buffy, but we were really all Dawns, and that we just didn't like that about ourselves, and so we took it out on her, because we're probably more like the I want to be the Slayer, than we are the the actual badass person that's gonna go out and do things. So I definitely try to give Dawn a break. I never hated her though. Even in the beginning, I definitely found her, to be annoying sometimes, but I think, she's supposed to be. But
yeah, she's 14 after all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, 13, 14 around the time that I was watching this. So I was, right there
right,
with her.
Right.
So anyway.
Okay. Jean, how about you?
Well, like everybody else, I was really shocked when all of a sudden there was a baby sister. I mean, that really took me aback too, because like Anna, I thought, did I miss something? What happened? Did I miss an episode? Was there
right
before this that I missed? But I think part of Dawn too. I it's not that I didn't like her, but I guess because I have an older sister and I had a younger sister, I could relate to some of the annoyances that happen with your little sister. The clothes and the all this stuff. It's just But the big thing, though, is there's Dawn, who's just a normal little girl, and she has a sister who's a slayer. So how do you relate? What is your self-worth like? When you're thinking about yourself compared to this hero that's your older sister, and everyone, and Buffy has the Scooby Gang, and everybody looks up to her, and so I think I had more empathy for Dawn earlier than I might have if I just came on this season first, and all of a sudden there was an annoying little sister, and I think I like the way they developed. I like the way Dawn's character developed. I like that, and Michelle is just a wonderful actress because she had to go through a whole range of emotions, in this series, and she did it extremely. Of course, all of the actors in this ensemble cast are wonderful, but I got to like Dawn very much. And I took the ride right along to the end. I didn't know how this is going to work out for her. The first time I saw the series, I had no idea what was going to happen. But she had a lot of grace at the end, and I liked Dawn.
Okay, Davior.
Yeah. Some awesome things have been said. I just want to give a shout out to how the character of Dawn is introduced, because she's introduced at the end of Buffy versus Dracula in episode 1. And then we go another 4 episodes before we even reveal who or what she is. And I remember watching this in real time back in 2001 when this season first aired. And it was awesome because every week you were just asking, but what about Dawn? What about the sister? Are we going to get back to that? And I just love the way they took their time and just truly just presenting her like, yeah, she's always been here. What's wrong with you? And I just love that. And then when we find, because, and also not only are we wondering what is happening, who is she, but you always have in the back of your head, is she something evil? Is the reveal going to be that she's some kind of witch or some kind of demon, or is she some kind of angel? So just how they played with that, I just thought was just really wonderfully done. And yeah, Beth and Jean said it perfectly. I like the brattiness that she has at times during the season, because when your sister has saved the world multiple times, how else do you bring attention to yourself? How else do you assert yourself in the world where your sister is a superhero other than to just be a brat and bring attention to yourself? So I thought that was logical to me. And I guess I can see like how in the moment that was a turnoff. But just from a writing standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, if there's one thing I have to say about it, I think in the body where we get to see Dawn in like high school life with like her friends, I almost wish there was more scenes of that, of seeing Buffy, of seeing Dawn in her own world rather than in the Buffy Scooby Gang world, because I thought that was so cool to see how does Dawn interact just in her circles. So I appreciated that. But I thought Michelle Trachtenberg is a fantastic actor, and I just love the way that character grew over the course of the season. And so yeah, I love Dawn a lot. And the shout out to my favorite Dawn moment actually that we'll get to is in the finale. It's in The Gift. And before, it was spoiler alert for those who are listening that don't know the show, but before Buffy gives her life, Dawn has that one moment where she's about to run without even a moment's hesitation. Yeah. And it just shows you the growth of who she is, that she was willing to give her life without pause because she knew it was the thing that she had to do. So I just love that character and how it was designed from beginning to end in this season.
Yeah.
Okay, that something else to your point about how they kind of kept us guessing, as to what her character was like. There were a couple of moments that it was the end of one episode where she's writing in her diary and she says, well, they all think, or I don't know if people think I'm just Buffy's little sister and that's all I am, but just wait till they find out. And so that's supposed to make us think. And then there's also the time where she makes tea for Joyce.
Yeah.
And, and so you're kind of sitting on the end of your seat. What are you doing? And, even though after having seen it multiple times, it still has the effect on me, rewatching it, just to say how good she was at putting that question in your mind. And I thought that was really well done. Mark.
Yeah, so just to echo what a lot of people have said, I didn't hate Dawn like some people back then, but she was, she is annoying, and that was in part because we're not supposed to know if she's, in part because she's a teenager, in part because we don't know if she's, good or bad.
Right.
And like you're talking about, Carol, like they did a great job, especially in that episode, about making us wonder, like, oh, is she evil? Is she making Joyce crazy? What's going on here? And I just really appreciate the bold storytelling choice by introducing this character to a cast, kind of doing this soft retcon, basically, at least to their memories. I don't like retcons and stuff very much, but Joss made it work, or the whole team did. And it was very bold and very for them to just go multiple episodes without telling us.
Right.
I think that's another level of storytelling where you're playing with the audience's expectations. You're pulling them along and playing around with that. And we had grown to trust this team at this point after 5 or over 4 seasons now, to know that we weren't going to be disappointed what was going to happen. Like if they tried this in season 1, I don't know how it would have went over, but or season 2 even. But yeah, I don't know why people hate teenagers. Like Wesley Crusher on Star Trek TNG, everybody hates him so bad. I'm just like, why? He's okay.
See, I didn't even know anything about that. I don't know how anybody could hate Wesley. Come on. Yeah,
I know, right?
I hear about that now, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, Renita had a comment here about that not really liking Dawn either. And part of it was the suddenness and the mystery. So yeah, when somebody just pops up all of a sudden from the show that we've been watching for 4 years, and then all of a sudden you've got this unexplained person, and that is kind of funny hearing some of you say, thinking, wait a minute, did I miss something? Was there an episode that I didn't know about? And yeah.
Well, and also, Carol, if I could just say to that point, it's like, and historically too, I think for me, just for all the things I grew up watching, and I think for a lot of us, when the kid sister or kid brother showed up on a hit show, that was normally when the show was taking a dive, and they would bring in the cute new kid to kind of lift the show up. So it was a risk for them to bring in this baby sister character, because I'm like, oh, does this mean this show is about to take a left turn and just start sinking? So because historically that's what always happened. So again, just them kind of playing with that expectation and just flipping that on its head, I thought was great.
They should have called the episode "Jump the Shark?" ?
Well, there we go.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been something. Well, now we are going to move on to the body episode, and I agree with you, Davior, about this being the best episode of the season. I think, and personally, I used to think this, and I kind of still do, and I've watched a lot more television of all kinds in between now and then, and I would still maintain that this is one of the best episodes of television, period, that I've ever seen. I just think it, period. And what my question for you guys is that, how do you feel about it? How did you feel about it originally? How do you feel about it now? And and what do you think its place is in the larger narrative of the show itself? And Anna, you're first.
I mean, it's obviously a really powerful episode. I think it is probably one of the best episodes of television ever made. And there's certain shots from that just like stay with you, like the really close up of Buffy's face when she first is just trying to. Anyways, I don't want to talk about it too much. I'm gonna make everybody cry.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to get issues.
But yeah, there's certain shots and there's certain moments in that episode that just stay with you. Like Anya processing is definitely one of the biggest ones for me. Especially because I feel like for me, that's I probably had the most Anya reaction to death myself, you know, personally. Like, what is this? Why is this happening? Like, what? I don't understand, you know, like when I was younger. And I watched this as when I was younger. So that it resonated. And then, you know, I think it's also sets up so much for the rest of the series and where the rest of the series goes, because not having her mom changes your life, right? And it changes the show. It changes how Buffy operates. It changes who she is. And I mean, we see all of that. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it next month. In season 6 and 7. But it really does impact just the whole series. And also I think for Dawn, I wasn't sure that Dawn was going to continue to be in the show at this point, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know, like, is she just gonna not be the key anymore, and then next season we're gonna go back to just the Scooby Gang, you know? But sort of the implications that, like, she's kind of the reason that her mom died, like, in a way, but you don't want to say that to a kid, but she's not really a kid, and there's a whole lot around that I thought they, you know, they dealt with pretty well. So anyway.
I'm curious about your comment though about that maybe that it was because of her that Joyce died. I don't quite follow.
Well, they said that rewriting Joyce's brain was the reason that she had the tumor, like changing all of her memories.
I never caught that.
I didn't either. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
It was. I don't even remember when it happened. Does anybody else? Am I the only person that remembers this? Oh no,
I've never heard it before.
No.
It was there was like a comment where it was like, you can't just like rewrite someone's brain and not expect there to be consequences or something like that. I'm gonna have to figure out where it was.
Okay, good point.
But it was basically that trying to put into a mother's brain that her child, you know, like give her all of those memories and all of the is what caused it.
Yeah. Interesting. That does put an even kind of weirder spin on the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like,
we're all going to be going back and
did I make this up? No, like I certainly didn't, right? Like I remember
that was retconned in a different timeline. Sorry.
Well, I'm just wondering if it was some kind of fan theory that maybe you read a while back and somehow it got stuck in your brain, because I honestly don't remember any comments like that. But now I'm going to have to go back and watch. Thanks.
We all will.
Well, no, I'm gonna have to also like go back and figure out where I heard it, because
when you find it, let us all know, please.
Because Dawn doesn't know here what she is, does she? At this point,
by that point,
I don't think that Dawn knows. No, but I think the comment, it might have been in season 6, y'all. It might have been later. I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure it out.
I mean, earlier on, I think they were wondering if Dawn or Glory had done something, or maybe us in the audience were thinking that Glory might have done something to her to make her crazy like everybody else.
I think somebody does ask that. I know they do, and they said no, it's natural causes.
The moon-eating Queller demon went after her like the other ones. So,
right. Okay, Jane.
Well, this episode, of course, I think is the hardest one to watch. Even harder, I think, than the finale. This just takes you through all the emotion, but it's, I think, one of, again, one of Joss's strengths is that there's no music in here, so you don't have musical cues. You know, you're coming upon all of her emotions honestly, and the things that she's thinking, like, you know, she opens the back door and life is going on. I mean, she hears, you know, people living, and it's like, why is this happening? How can everything be normal when this is so not normal? And her facial expressions. I mean, she's the shock. Her when she's, you know, when she has these fantasies about how she got there in time and saved her, and they're,
right.
you know, and they're in the ambulance, and the mother says, "Oh, I'm so glad you found me." The big Thanksgiving scene, you know, where everybody is happy and, you know, getting along, and the pumpkin pie drop and all this stuff. But all of these things, I think, would be so normal. Now, I have to say, I have never experienced it. I've never come upon someone that I love dead like that. So you know, but to me, and I guess I heard Josh say once, that this was from personal experience. This is something that happened to him, and that's how he, you know, he wanted to portray this. But everything, I mean, you know, just everyone trying to understand the what is not understandable. It's, you know, what is death? I mean, this. And to come from such a happy place. I mean, Buffy comes home and finds the flowers from her mother's date, and it's just like, you know, oh, life is good at this particular moment. Life is very good, and then she finds,
and then it's not. Yeah,
and then it's not, exactly, and just that. So I think this is. Absolutely, I agree with you. I think it's one of the best television episodes that I've ever seen. Any episode of any serial program that I've seen. I think this ranks right up there among the best.
Okay, Davior.
Yeah. I laid my cards down earlier, of course, and I think we're all saying the same thing so far. It's fantastic. I mean, and just from how the reveal is done. Her just walking into the house, and you just see this, you know, like the silhouette of Joyce laying down. And just in that moment, you know something's wrong because they set it up perfectly, because Buffy's calling her name and you see the figure not responding, and you know it's Joyce. And so your first thought is, oh no, what happened to Joyce? And then just to see it there with just like the blank, just the empty eyes and just the pale skin, it's just horrifying. And just, yeah, and as has been said, just the way the episode beautifully plays with sound and light, and just there's so many moments in there. Like I love when Buffy just like opens the back door and just stands there, because you have those moments in situations like that where you just don't know what to do. And I remember, you know, I haven't been in a situation like that, but in those hard moments where it's like all of a sudden the world just feels different. Like light hits you differently, like smells hit you differently. And the way that Joss was able to portray that, just like everything that goes through your mind and everything that goes through your body, and watching how everybody responds to it differently. I just think every aspect of it was just brilliant. And I even love how in the end, and I love two final things I'll say about it is, I love how for Dawn, she has to see her.
Yeah.
That is not going to be real until she sees her. She has to see the body.
Yeah.
Because Buffy got to see her. Buffy got to see Joyce and got to connect with Joy before they took Joyce away. Dawn didn't have that. And just how important it was for her to have that, to really touch and really believe that her mother was gone. And also I would say finally, is that it was a debate for a while, but I love how at the end there's the vampire that has to be slayed, because it's that moment of when like the most tragic thing in the world can happen to you, life is still going. And there's still things you have to deal with, because life doesn't stop just because your world stopped. So I love that even in this moment of just absolute tragedy and despair, she still doesn't get a break. She still has to be the slayer. And I just love, again, that little extra little seasoning that Joss put on it of just all the things you go through when you deal with tragedy. So yeah, I just think it's a supreme episode in every way.
Okay. Marks.
Yep, it's awesome. It is one of the best episodes of television in all time, whatever genre. I've seen sci-fi fantasy shows try to do something similar in the past, or since then, and they've never come close. And even any other genre, really, I think. I just think there's a real honesty to the episode of what goes through people's minds or can, and their experience, and how it kind of shakes your whole world. Like whenever Davia was talking about, whenever she's looking out the door, she hears these children playing and stuff, and it's this joy happening, right outside, completely disconnected from this terrible tragedy here. And oh yes, and I love how all the cinematography. I love the choice of no music score, using natural or sounds and stuff. And also, like in that opening shot, it's a one shot that they did after the commercial break. And Sarah Michelle Gellar's been doing a lot of interviews and stuff for Wolfpack, and someone asked her about the scene, and she says it's really hard for her to watch, and it was tough because she knew it was going to be, that actress was leaving the show, so it was kind of rough anyway. So there was going to be a real loss there. And then also they had to do this one shot for I don't know how long it was, and get it all perfect. Everybody had to get it perfectly right. So and it was such an emotional scene. It's rough on actors to do that over and over again and try to deliver. So it's so well done of an episode. Shows you like how Buffy can really elevate television. Something called Buffy the Vampire Slayer is some of the greatest writing on television. And I liked like whenever she's fighting the vampire in the morgue, it was hard for her. Like she wasn't pulling a lot of martial art moves. It was just it was a struggle because she's still shaken by everything that happened. And I just love the honesty. I just don't feel like I've seen anything else that's as honest about a death of a loved one as that. They always feel a little disconnected. There's always a little bit of escapism there that doesn't try to get quite as real as that one did.
Yeah.
Okay. And Beth.
Yeah, I mean, what everybody said is so accurate. This is an episode that stays with you. I mean, I think it's probably in the top 3 of TV episodes that just had a real lasting impact in terms of how it made you feel. And I'll echo what everybody said about choosing not to have a soundtrack for this episode was absolutely the right choice, because it's also kind of awkward because we all grieve differently, and so everyone's reacting differently, but also it's tough sometimes to know what you're supposed to say and how you're supposed to act around people who are grieving. And by not having a soundtrack to this episode, we have to experience those awkward silences and those awkward moments with the characters. And I think that makes it so much more realistic than if there was some sad music playing in the background. It makes it a lot more real. And I think we've probably all been in situations where we've felt that awkwardness and trying to figure out what to say to somebody who's lost a loved one. And another thing that I like, going back to the episode previous to this one, when Buffy finds the body, when she says "mommy," I mean, that
oh my God, I know, yeah,
just breaks my heart, because whatever writer chose to have her say "mommy" instead of repeating the word "mom," it is just absolutely a genius. Because in that moment, she's not the slayer. She is a little girl who is realizing that she has just lost her mother, and it's just, that one word just tears me apart every single time I see it. So yeah, I think that the writing for this episode, the acting, the creative choices that were made in how this was shot and produced and put together, I think everything just came together to create one of the most incredible episodes of TV.
Yeah, and many of you have mentioned the way that the show was shot, and I agree with you. And one of the scenes that always strikes me is when Anya and Xander and Willow and Tara are all in the dorm, and the camera's coming looking down on them from above, and they're kind of they're not in an exact circle, but they're kind of standing around, and they're all just at that point just kind of waiting. They're not sure what to do or say, and to me that was a fairly accurate representation, even though these are people, they know each other well, relatively speaking anyway, and for them to still be in that kind of a situation, and the way that Anya is asking all the time, what are we going to be doing? What are we supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
What are we, what is going to be expected of us? Because she has no idea. And so it kind of brings it home that, it's kind of intensified, I think, from what from what anybody's reaction would be. It's like when you toss that, I'm newly human, aspect into it, it makes it even more, pronounced, I guess you could say. And this was Renita's comment about that it was a shock. You never expected one of the adults to die and stay dead. Yeah. Spoiler for anybody who watches this who hasn't seen their other seasons. But yes. So yes, but I think it was, the fact that she got sick in the first place was kind of, that was scary enough. So but it does go to show that, nobody's really particularly safe on the show, right? So now we will turn to something that's a little more, something that we can probably all enjoy in terms of humor. And we're going to talk about Spike.
Okay, yay!
Now, Spike and his story arc this season. And how do you feel about the character at this point in time? Just did you like what they're doing with him this season, and all of that? And guess what, Jean, you get to go first.
Well, yeah, I like Spike. I was always on the Spike Angel side of things, Spike side.
You were a Buffy, not a Bangel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Spike. This season, Spike is just so pathetic. I mean, he's just out of his element, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And of course, the spike in Spike, not the spike, the what is it in his head? The chip in his head prevents him from following his real nature, even though I think obviously his nature changes a lot in this season. And he tries to be such a badass all the time, and yet, like when he decides that he's had enough of Buffy, and he loads that gun and he goes over and he's going to shoot her. He's just going to shoot her, and then he sees her sobbing on the steps, and he can't do it. He just can't do it. So he's so pathetic that he has a Buffy bot made, just like for Warren, like Warren's, because it's not a sex toy, it's a girlfriend, right? Yeah, right. So I love it. I love Spike. I love the way he hangs around their house, the outside of their house, and then just pretends that he's just stopped by, or he's just
walking by. Yeah, I just happened to be in the neighborhood.
Somebody finds him, and yet there's a pile of cigarettes where he's just sitting there. And when he realizes that when he's having that dream about Buffy and they're making love and they're kissing and everything, and he jerks awake and goes, "Oh God, no!" I think that was the first time he realized.
Yeah.
He loves Buffy. He loves Buffy, and that's going to be the bane of his existence from here on. And I know we'll probably talk about the last episode.
Yeah, we will talk about the finale. Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about the finale because Spike's reaction. I tend to watch Spike whenever he's on the screen, and his reaction, especially when he views her body, and he just falls to his knees and he's sobbing, and it's just like, oh, I love you, Spike. Anyway, so I don't know exactly what else to say about this, except that I like the way I like Spike in this season, because he's more human than he has been. Even though he keeps declaring himself a monster, he's just, he protects Dawn, and all of he has this nobleness to him this season that comes across. So I like Spike.
Okay. I like Spike. There we go. That's your new motto. We need. We want to see a banner up behind you.
Yeah,
I like Spike. Davior.
Yeah. Okay, so Spike's got a top 20 episode from this season in Fool for Love. I think that's just one of the most perfect Spike episodes and uses of Spike, and I think that's fantastic. And I think he's got one of the better lines in all of the season in The Gift. And he tells her, as he's going to the house with her, I know you never loved me, but you treat me like a man. And I love that moment. But this season was the beginning of Spike kind of jumping the shark for me. And for me, he completely jumps the shark in season 6 and 7. But it starts kind of in this season, because even though I think there is a logic to these two lifelong villains eventually kind of developing, or one of them developing a passion for the other, because he has been so obsessed with stopping her that it kind of becomes this twisted kind of passion for her that actually makes sense. But it kind of betrays kind of the lore, what they've set up, and that he's supposed to not have a soul. So how is he feeling these emotions and breaking down, crying? It's I don't understand. It's like, for me, it gets a little trippy when the rules we've set start to get betrayed because we really like the character. And it's like, well, we don't have to worry about it here because we all love Spike, right? And and with a show of this caliber, that starts to irk me, because what makes this show so good is that they have such a foundation that has meaning to it. So even though it's fun to play with these aspects of Spike just losing himself and being defanged, because it's like the ultimate defeat of him by the Slayer. Not that she stakes him, but that she just makes him completely whipped for her. I mean, that's the ultimate defeat of the vampire. But I think it kind of betrays some of the foundation and some of the rules that they've established. And even though I like certain episodes, I always had a problem with why are we keeping this guy around? Who, if that chip, again, it's what I said last season, that if that chip ever fails, they're all screwed. But so I've got questions. I had some issues with it.
Well, there's something to your point, though, that it's something that has bothered me for a long time, but I think I'm going to let everybody else respond before I bring it up, because it was something I wanted to talk about, and I thought, do I talk about it yet now, or do we talk about it later in this, after the series is done? But there is that point where, in one of the episodes in this season where Buffy's tied up and Drusilla's there, and Buffy tells him, you can't love me. You don't have a soul. Or you can't love anything, or you can't love anybody. You don't have a soul. And Drusilla says, oh, yes, we can. That's not exactly true. And so I think that what you are feeling betrayed by is something that is kind of the party line in terms of what it's supposed to be like when you're a vampire. But maybe we weren't being told the truth, or maybe we weren't being told everything. But that's just my feeling about that. But that's actually ties in with something else, which I will wait until we're finished with everybody else, and then I'll ask that everybody's opinion about that. So, Marks, what about you?
So I like Spike a lot, and I liked a lot of this season, like for him to grow to eventually become a hero, I think. partly through behavior modification in the chip and this love for, or these feelings for Buffy. I think they're a little twisted, but obviously with the Buffy bot aspect and stuff.
Renita says that. It's creepy and awful.
Yeah. And but I liked how when you take this with all the other stories, it creates this big arc for him to eventually, do something that I think like Angelus never did. For example, Angelus got cursed to become Angel. He didn't have any kind of that's why I think Angel could snap right back into evil, because he didn't do anything to deserve that, I guess, or to become that. But I do feel like, I think so. I was thinking like stuff like Davier was talking about too, but I think, I don't know if it's because of Drew. I don't know if it's because of William's personality as a human, of this romantic personality of a poet. But I do feel like both him and Drew's far more twisted, but they both do have love for each other, and they do feel emotions in a different way than some of the other vampires. Like in season 2 of the Judge, he is going to smite them at first because he can smell humanity on them. And I think that's him smelling a little bit of that emotion that Angelus definitely doesn't have. So, but I think Spike's hilarious. I think Spike, his intuition about people is always spot on, and that gives him a nice piece of the ensemble cast, I guess, of the family, where he's always kind of helping out, bringing out the truth, I guess, and stuff, and helping people figure things out. And I just, even though the Buffy bot's a little disturbing, but
although she is hilarious too.
It is hilarious too.
It's disturbing, but she is funny.
And I think they also save that too, with, at least from Buffy's point of view, a family appreciating a little bit, because she tries to trick him into revealing if Spike had given up Dawn, she sees whether it's twisted or what, that he does have this loyalty to her, and gives him a real kiss, or at least a peck kiss, and so at least you can see some of that hero starting to come out of Spike. So. But yeah, I just like Spike a lot.
Okay, well, you get an I like Spike banner too. Beth.
I'm gonna get stickers made for Dragon Con for all of us and say like Team Spike.
That's right. Everybody here on this panel will be at Con this year. Yes.
Woo-hoo, yay.
Yes, I was very pleased to see some names up on the website. Okay. Anna better be, because she works for me. So yeah.
I enjoy Spike's story arc this season for the most part. There are some things that I find a little bit ridiculous. Strangely enough, I think I find him having a mannequin with a blonde wig on it almost more disturbing than the Buffy bot. There's just something so strange about that to me. But I like how not only do we get to know Spike's backstory in Fool for Love, but we also see these little moments with him, like when Buffy brings Dawn and Joyce to his lair so that he can keep them safe, and he and Joyce sit down together to watch that soap opera Passions. That small little moment seems like such a little throwaway thing, but I think it shows like that kind of, that he's not just a monster. And I think that bond that he seemed to have with Joyce, I always really enjoyed the relationship between the two of them. And, I'm also Team Spike all the way. And I would argue, though, that what he and Drusilla call love, it isn't love as us humans would consider it. It's more of a passion, because vampires are very passionate in anything they do, especially if they're out killing somebody. But I feel like a lot of the things he does, like his obsession with her, like that's not really love, it's obsession, it's this passion. So it's like the soap opera, but so it's a little bit different. I think his definition of love is different than certainly what Buffy's definition of love would be. But one of the things that I was really cognizant of watching this this season again is how horribly the Scooby Gang treats Spike, even when he's trying to help. Like I said, Buffy will take her mom and her sister to him to be kept safe, but then she's always telling him how horrible he is and how awful he is, and he's nothing but a monster. It's like, make up your mind, honey, which is it? But I think the scene that bothered me the most was when, after Joyce died, Spike showed up at the house with flowers, and Xander intercepted him and was saying like, oh, you're just doing this to score points with Buffy. And Spike says, I'm here for Joyce. And that just, Xander not even considering the fact that Spike could be grieving to some extent just really irked me. And I just wanted to shout at him and give him a lecture on Spike's behalf. But so it was just, I just didn't like seeing the way they treated him despite his status as a vampire.
Okay.
Xander always had it in for Spike. Always has it in.
Oh yeah.
Never cuts him any slack at all.
He doesn't like anybody that likes Buffy.
Right.
Luckily, they chilled that out a bit after season 3. But yeah, that's a flaw of his.
Yeah, you almost have to shake your head in surprise, or just like you have to reset the marbles when the two of them. I don't remember if it's in the finale itself or if it's in it's the episode before the finale, in The Weight of the World, when they go to see the demon together. It's Spike and Xander, and they're actually having to do something together. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, and work together. And you're like, oh my God, did I just see that? But anyway, okay. And give us your Spike opinion.
Okay, here's my Spike opinion. So I think this season my favorite Spike moments were with Dawn and Joyce. I think with Dawn particularly, I think we get to see kind of like what Daviar was talking about, where we get to see Dawn at school. Getting to see just Dawn and Spike together is different than Dawn with the Scooby Gang. Like, I like Dawn when she's with Spike more than, you know what I mean? She's less annoying when she's around. But I think it's also that they're both outsiders. Neither of them are really let into the gang, right? And so they have this kind of bond, and obviously it grows a little bit more next season, especially at the beginning of the season. But it's that's probably some of my favorite Spike moments. And then my top favorite Spike moment of the season is, in his glory, are you all very stoned?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what he's trying to explain it. Yeah. That was funny.
But yeah, it's just so funny, that whole scene. I could watch it on repeat.
Right. Yeah, because they all do such a good job too.
Like they know each other. Like they
right. Yeah. And then as soon as they get it figured out, that happened with Giles when he's like they'll like, when he explains it, they'll understand, but then within another minute they've already forgotten it all again.
Yeah.
And that was kind of funny to see.
But yeah, and then Spike had to be the one reminding them all.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, hey, wake up, people.
On track.
Now, Renita has a few comments about this, which I'm going to show here. Is that she said, I think the reason Spike was able to love is because that was his base. Being a vampire just magnified that base aspect. And that Angel was a boastful and sometimes cruel man alive. Him becoming a vampire just took the reins off. I think that it was the same with Spike. His loving nature was turned into jealousy and obsession. And I think those are both. I think those are both really good points. And I think that one of the conversations that I'm interested in having, but it may be more appropriate just so because we could talk about this one all night, is the difference between Angel and Spike, with a soul, without a soul, that kind of thing. And so some of what Renita is saying, I think, plays into that, but I'm not sure that that answers the whole thing for me. So I think we may come back to that though, because I think we need it'll maybe we could probably do a whole panel just on that.
I count me in for that panel.
What's that?
I said count me in for that panel.
Okay.
Yeah, let's have a Spike debate
Angel
panel.
versus Spike. Yeah.
Okay, Angel versus Spike panel. Okay, anybody else want to take part in that one?
Yeah, I've got a lot of issues with Spike. Yes,
it would turn into fist fighting in the crowds. Like it would be. It would be.
Well, no, we'll do it online, so then we don't have to worry about it. Okay. Well, we will come back to that. Maybe we'll do that after our whole watch is over. It'll give us time to kind of think about it too, because it's not as though we won't see Angel again a few times throughout the throughout the course of the series. So now, and I did have another question I wanted to do before the finale one, but if I think we'll do it, but we'll just be really quick about it. One of the things that struck me as I was sitting there thinking about what I wanted to talk about about the show earlier today is that it seems to me that the dynamics of the group are changing a bit, and I'm wondering, do you think that can be attributed to the addition of new characters, the loss of some characters, or something else? Or do you not disagree with me, or do you disagree with me completely? And as I said, we'll try to make that one a short one before we talk about the finale. And this one, anybody can just answer whoever, whatever you.
Yeah, I think the dynamics changed a little bit because we have Xander with Anya, and Anya is just learning, almost like Spike, is learning how to be human, and everything is she says inappropriate things because she doesn't understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. She doesn't understand the human condition. She's trying to learn about it, and then Willow and Tara. I mean, they're the whole. I mean, that because of Tara, we see the first glimpse of Dark Willow when Glory attacks Tara and Willow goes after her. I think they're still at heart the Scoobies, but they've just added. There's just other dimensions that have been added now to the group.
And I was wondering why my numbers were off. It's because I completely skipped a question which we need to discuss. But does anybody else just raise your hand if you agree that the dynamics are shifting this season? Okay.
Yeah.
And they should. I mean, I think that's what makes a good show is that the dynamics should change. They're older, they're experiencing different things. I think that was one of the realities of the show that made me stay with it, is how it transitioned as the characters went from high school, went into college, and then went into the real world. Their dynamics should change because they're becoming their own adults and they're and having their own things right now. Just like some of the things that Jean was pointing out. It's like, yeah, I mean, Xander has a full-time relationship. Willow's becoming a witch. I mean, it is so naturally they're not going to be who they are, and I think and how they change with each other within these changing dynamics, I think is what makes the show continue to grow and be interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they would like to add to that idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then the next thing. What's that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go, well, yeah, I agree, and I think it's becoming more of an ensemble cast in a way. Like Willow and Xander are taking on stronger or more central roles in some of the missions or quests or whatever you'll call them. Cases.
And after Buffy went catatonic, over at the gas station, and Giles is pretty much out of the picture. Thankfully, Ben fixed him before he, was able, or got him leveled out anyway. But then Willow just kind of steps up and takes over and tells everybody what to do. So, and they don't argue with her either. Of course, they've all at that point seen what she can do. So they probably figure, okay, well, we'll go along with that. But yeah, I completely skipped my question about Glory. And Glory as a villain, what did you find most effective about the character, or what didn't work for you? And Davior, you get to go first.
Yeah. So I don't think Glory is the most interesting villain of any of the Buffy seasons, but and you see that in the show because you have episodes where Glory, who's this god trying to get this key, just kind of disappears for like multiple episodes at a time. But I think it doesn't bother me as much in this season because the focus is not really on the villain until it has to be. Like the villain is there and it is a MacGuffin for them to deal with, but the real crux of this show is this overall journey that Buffy is going through. That's the real focus of season 5. It's the real villain, to get really kind of heady with it, I think, is adulthood and just like your own mortality for season of where Buffy is. I think that's the real thing that she's struggling with. And I think Glory is just something that is amplifying that struggle. So Glory is not really my main focus. Is just the thing to kind of amplify what my biggest problem is, which is the death of the Slayer. So there are moments when Claire, kind of grates on me a little bit. Claire Kramer in the role of Glory. I don't think the duality of her and Ben is as interesting as it could be, but again, it doesn't bother me because the real interests are the other things. So I guess that's what I'll say about Glory.
Okay. Marks.
Well, I like how Glory is so powerful that they have to outthink Glory in a way, or have to approach her in a different way than even Adam, who was pretty powerful. But I kind of like her better than Adam in some ways. I feel like the finale, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, I think was a lot stronger than a lot of the complaints we had from last season didn't happen in this one, probably. But I do like the idea of her being so vain in a way, and she's so opposite to have been the human host body, I guess, that she's in or sharing space with. And I do think they should have probably explored that whole thing a little bit more, because I'm kind of curious about some of that. But it was interesting to see them fight a villain that was just so out of their power range. And how they. So I think this season structurally is one of the best, probably like how Daviar said, because it brings together so much from other episodes for them to be able to defeat her in the end. And I really like that because I don't think the other seasons necessarily did that. So I think structurally it was great as a payoff with that villain, even though it wasn't quite as emotional as a villain and jealous. I don't know why she's not quite as interesting as some of the other villains. Even the Master, in some ways, I felt like was a little bit more dramatic and interesting. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we just saw her so much. Like I feel like we could have seen her a little less and it would have made her a little bit more impactful.
Okay, that's interesting. Beth.
I'm going to agree with Marks that we could have seen maybe a little less of Glory, and then it would have made her scenes when she is acting like such a diva even more fun to watch, because there would have been a little less of it. Because I felt like for me, a little bit of it goes a long ways. But also I would say this season just, it just wasn't about the big bad. And in some ways it wasn't really about monsters. I mean, to me, the real focus of this season is about the relationship between our characters and the amount of growing up that they have to do. And just, just dealing with adult stuff like losing a mother and, Xander having to work and make a living and be able to afford his apartment. So I just feel like, Glory, yeah, she was fine. She was, I have no real complaints about her, but I just don't think she was the most important part of this season.
Okay. Anna.
I really liked her. I just thought she was so fun and so different from all of our other villains that we've had before on Buffy. And I don't know, it didn't bother me like how often we saw her. I do think the Ben Glory thing could have been explained better, maybe, or just like explored more or something. But I don't know. I thought she was fun.
She does have an excellent posse of minions, I have to say.
And I do love it. I love the minions. And
Yeah,
like all of her like little running around her. Oh, can I do like I don't know. It's just she's dramatic, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of what I always appreciated about her, about the portrayal, was that she was all in. You know,
Yes.
she was willing to do whatever it took to get that across, that character across. And I think, that could go anywhere from being funny and diva-like, as you said, down to being just, vicious and cruel. And she seemed to be all in for it, was kind of my feeling. But Jean, I should have let you say something before it.
Well, you asked me what we liked about Glory. Well, her fashion sense. I mean, her wardrobe and her heels, her stiletto heels and stuff. But I have a different take on Glory, I guess. I think Glory is here because Glory explains Dawn. I mean, if there wasn't a Glory, then there wouldn't be a Key, and then we wouldn't know what Dawn's purpose was. So I think she was a very important character in this season, because she's the whole reason that Dawn's there. Because it explains Dawn.
Explains the necessity of Dawn. Okay, well. Mm-hmm. Hadn't really thought about that, but that does make sense.
Me neither.
Okay, we're going in. We're going to talk about the finale. And I had lots of thoughts as I was thinking about this. And, Buffy's been really beaten down by life this season, to say the least. And everything from, you had made the comment earlier, Davior, about the checkpoint episode with the Watchers Council, and where she stands up to them and says, well, everybody's been telling me that I'm not important, that I'm not worth much, but I've figured out it's because I have power and they don't. And, or certain kinds of power and they don't. So, I mean, everything from something of a lesser emotional impact, because I don't, the emotions for the Watchers Council are probably basically anger, which I think that's what most of us have, but for them. But then, it goes all the way from that to Riley, to trying to figure out her own place, her mom getting sick, it just keeps getting worse and worse. Excuse me. But did you feel as though this last episode, the gift of her sacrificing herself, did it feel to you as though the events of the season were just that they were all leading up to this, and that on some level she wanted this to be her final act because of how things had been for her? Marks, you're up again.
Yeah, I think it does. Death is her gift, and we're getting a lot of foreshadowing throughout the season about what could happen up to this point. I think I think looking back now, this rewatch, maybe I'll change my mind once we watch 6 and 7. But I feel like I have two favorite finales, and the second one with Angelus is my favorite from an emotional standpoint, because that sacrifice she has to make. It's hard to beat that kind of that episode. But then this season, I feel like has such a great structure to it, where every piece comes together at the end. But themes, character arcs, all of it. We get the Olive's hammer from that episode with the Tro. Yeah. We get the Buffy bot. We get of course Spike helping them. We get Willow's magic to help save Tara and Weekend Glory. We get the Dagon sphere. they burn together lots of little pieces throughout this, and then the themes of her trying to figure out her purpose, and if she, how the sacrifice she would make for the world, all of it, and even a little bit of Ripper in there with him doing the hard thing of killing Ben, which they alluded to, earlier, and so I think there's just a great structure to it. It made it so good. It was just a great action. Up to that point, probably the biggest action scenes we've had, I believe, and fighting on the Tower of Glory and Buffy, and all the game, like rushing the crowd and everything. It was a great episode, and they brought together some of these great themes throughout the whole season. I think really, really well.
Okay, Beth.
This is a really satisfying season finale for me. And I'm going to get the wording on this wrong because I didn't write it down. But when we're hearing everything that Buffy had said to Dawn when they were talking on the tower, she says something to the extent of, the bravest thing you can do is choose to live, to go out and live your life. And Buffy, from the moment we meet her in season 1, she's complaining that she can't have a life because she's the Slayer. Like, that's all she wants, is to go out and live her life and be herself rather than being the Slayer all the time. And so I feel like for me, when she realizes that her gift is death, not just to save the world, but to give her sister the opportunity she never had to just go out and live her life, to no longer be the Slayer's little sister, but just to be a normal child, albeit an orphaned child. Well, I guess their dad is still, I guess he's still around somewhere in Italy or Spain.
Who knows? Yeah.
But I felt like that made it even more significant, that she wasn't giving up her life just for the world, but she was doing it for her friends and her sister so that they could have that chance that she never had. So I appreciated that extra emotional punch there.
Okay. Anna.
I mean, it really is probably the best finale of this. Well, I really like the season 7 finale. Maybe I like that one more. I don't know, but they're very close. But I do remember at the time watching it live being like, that surely did not just happen. Is this over? Is this show over?
Yeah.
And, but I mean, it really is perfect in so many ways. And the moment with Dawn at the top and the jump, I don't know, it's very perfect. There's not much else to say.
Yeah, I almost kind of was like, maybe they should just have Dawn the Slayer next season.
Yeah.
Well, I meant to preface when I first asked this question, but when at the time that this aired live, everybody remembers VCRs, right? Except maybe Anna, who might be too young. Anyway,
I would tape the episodes on my VCR.
So did I, and this is what happened when the finale aired. I had to work that night. Back in at that time, and so I had taped it, and then the next night I had a book group that met in the town where I work, so I didn't have time to come all the way home and then go back again. So I was going to watch it when I came home after the book group, but I hadn't seen it yet. So this one lady who was at the book group had watched it live, and she was like, so about that episode last night, she's like, so, and she had a British accent. So, and she said, so are we to have a new Slayer then? And I was like, what the actual hell happened? And so, but I mean, we'd already heard it was coming back, so we knew it was going to be there. So I said, that's what I told her. I said, well, it's coming back, but anyway. So okay, Jane.
Yeah, I this was a great finale, and I do believe the whole season was leading up to this, because even when Willow did the mind meld thing, and she was at Continent Loop with Buffy. And at that one point, Buffy's pushing a book back, and Willis, what were you thinking? What's going on? And Buffy said that I want it to be over. I want this to be over. I think that kind of took me aback a little bit, because then, of course, there's the scenes where she's smothering Dawn. Death is my gift. Don't you know? Death is my gift. This is so. Yeah, I do think that everything led up to this point, and her words to Dawn were exactly that. Live your life. But I had one big question about that, and I don't understand, how could they have built that big ass tower and nobody noticed?
And nobody noticed.
Right.
Nobody in town noticed that some of this huge tower is going up.
Look, the cops in Sunnydale don't exist.
Yeah.
When Olaf Patrol was destroying the city, and I just kept asking, where are the cops?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, that is a good point, because I was thinking that too.
yeah,
And it was like, well, they've got to follow Tara to figure out where to go. And it's like, wait a minute, it's not
right.
skyscrapers.
I think one of the most dramatic parts of the finale too is when Giles kills Ben, because he knows Buffy can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
He knows Buffy can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, almost every day, because I know, this month, when I know that, the end of this is coming, and that particular scene is very powerful. And I kept hearing it in my head, Giles saying, because she's a hero, you see.
Yes.
Because she's a hero, it was on a loop in my head. I mean, I didn't hear it like one time after, but it seemed like almost every single day I would be doing something, and I would think about, oh, well, tonight's episode is going to be such and such. And then eventually I'd have that quote in my head, because it's so significant that even though it's been a few years since I've watched that episode before last night, it stuck with me.
Yeah.
All right, Devior, take us home.
Yeah. Everyone has said some great stuff. I love. Was it Anna or Beth that talked about how the sacrifice, giving Dawn the opportunity to live, which I think is a really, really great thought. And I've always thought, spoiler alert for season 2, episode 1, coming in 2/1, is that I've always thought it would have been so much cooler, instead of seeing Spike depressed on the couch with Dawn, if he was like training her, or like teaching her how to kill vampires or something like that, to kind of make up for his failure in protecting her. But just something like that. I think, to the point of the season being about Buffy kind of accepting the mortality, I think that's nailed home for me in 2 episodes. I think it's nailed home in Fool for Love, and I think it's nailed home in Weight of the World, when she reveals in her mind palace that she had that moment where she thought about just letting it be over. And
right.
so it is the destiny of the Slayer to eventually to die. And I love that we've seen the journey of Buffy from season 1, who was just distraught about the idea of death, to getting to this point where she knows it is her gift. And I think something that was also, very potent for me is, I remember watching it live, and that there was that moment where we thought this was the last season, because I think there was like some contract deal with CW where the show was originally airing, and it wasn't getting picked up for CW. And for a minute before it moved to UPN, it didn't have a home, and we thought, well, Buffy was going to end. So that the show, that season was created as if, hey, if it's going to end, at least we're going to have a proper ending. And so that always and the show always kind of feels like that if it doesn't go on after this, it can be a satisfying and conclusive end to the show. But so I thought it was all done well, and I really just it hits me in the gut every time about the journey of that character. And even watching it this time, which is many times as I've seen that finale, it still gets me. I know. It's so well done, and it's so genuine. Like the sacrifice, it still gets me.
Yeah, I know. I was telling my husband, I was like, yeah, well, I got to get prepared, and because it's going to be the one, and he knew what I was talking about. So I agree. I mean, it does it, even though and it's like afterwards that I came back to get some tissues out of the bedroom, and my and my husband was back in he was doing something in there while I had been out in the living room, and I said, yeah, I got to get some tissues. Buffy just died. And I said, and yes, I know she's coming back, but it's still, it doesn't matter how many times you know it or see it. It has that, that kind of impact. But anyway, it was, it was it was one of those things, I think, that at the time, it was shocking, even if you knew the show was coming back, even though, as Renita said, the WDB called it a series finale. I was reading an article last night that apparently, and I remembered this now vaguely, I've probably still got the dang videotape somewhere, I'm not even kidding, that from what the finale was on was apparently at the end, in the end credits, or after the end credits, the WB put thank you. Mm-hmm. Instead of instead of something else, it was thank you. And this article I was reading was an interview with Joss Whedon that had happened. The interview was done right after the finale aired, and that he said that he thought that was pretty cool of them to do. That they had acknowledged that. But in any case. Great stuff, even if it did mean you had to have tissues nearby. I didn't take my own advice, but anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this, and thanks to all of our viewers, everyone who has been watching with us. Renita, we love you interacting with us. Thank you so much. And we appreciate everyone else who watches this later. And we hope that you will continue to do so. And we will. I am going to think about that Buffy versus Spike panel, not Buffy. Now, and that's a good point, Anna. I did consider doing it at con, but then I thought, what's that? But I think there could be, actual physical reaction. Well, I'm not so sure.
I mean, even just when discussing with my friends, we get pretty heated.
Yeah, it could be intense in person.
Yeah.
So maybe online.
I'm down for it. I have lots of arguments against Angel. So.
No, it's all about Angel. Angel is the true love. I'm sorry.
And then there's
me and Davy are going to go at it.
Then there's one random person's like, Riley.
Let's give a shout out to Riley. He was awesome this season, I thought.
Oh, he was. Yes.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about him and leaving, on his helicopter.
Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting that he was willing to wait around, and she didn't show, and then he leaves, but he never once looked back.
All right,
right? Looking all around, it's like, dude, if you just look down, you'll see him down there yelling, whatever.
He made his decision.
But it was funny that I saw an online interview with some of the cast, and this was probably at least 6 months ago. And Mark Blucas was on there, and I forget who else was there. But one of the questions from they had a moderator who would ask a lot of questions, but then they would have some audience questions that would come in. And one person was asking, well, what about, is it Riley or Spike? Which would have been better? And he's like, oh, come on. Well, wouldn't I? He's like, I would pick Spike, myself if it were me. But it was pretty funny. But yeah, well, we didn't talk much about Riley, but I kind of, I probably should have. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, well, we can't talk about everything, right? Not unless we want to do it forever and ever. But thank you to everyone. Our season 6 discussion will be on March 30th, the last Thursday in March. And also in next month, we have an author interview coming up with Gail Martin, somebody that many of you have seen on all of the Supernatural Rewind panels, in addition to Beth and Mark. So anyway, thank you very much to my wonderful panelists. I'll give you a hand myself.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
And thanks again to all of our viewers. And we appreciate your interest in the track and in the show, which is still, and I would arguably say, the best show ever that's ever been on TV. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.